She lived in silence, ignored by all, until one kind stranger sat beside her, and what he discovered about her past would leave the entire neighborhood speechless. At the corner of Maple Street in Savannah, Georgia, stood an old brick house with weather-worn shutters and vines growing through the cracks. In that house lived Mrs. Eloise Carter, 82, alone, quiet, nearly forgotten. Every morning she sat on the front porch in a creaky rocking chair, a faded shawl over her shoulders, and a book resting in her lap, though no one ever saw her turn a page. People passed her every day, dog walkers, teens on skateboards, parents in SUVs. They saw her, but never stopped. Some whispered rumors. She's weird. Talks to birds. Lost her mind after her husband died. No one truly knew her. No one tried. Until a new face arrived on Maple Street. Jordan Miller, 28, had just moved into the neighborhood. Freelance writer, city transplant, quiet, curious, and more observant than most. The first morning he jogged past Mrs. Carter. She looked up, nodded. He nodded back. The second morning she waved. He waved back. The third morning he stopped. "Morning, ma'am. I'm Jordan." Mrs. Carter blinked, like she hadn't heard her name spoken in years, then smiled gently. "Eloise?" What started as a nod became a wave. Then a smile. Then, one morning, Jordan brought her a cup of coffee. She accepted it with both hands. "You're the first person who's spoken to me in a very long time." He frowned. "How come?" Eloise just stared at the street, then whispered, "Because people only notice what moves fast, and I don't anymore." Jordan didn't know it yet, but the story he'd uncover behind that quiet woman's life would leave the whole town in tears. Over the next few days, Jordan made it a ritual. 2 coffees, one for him, one for Eloise. She began opening up, bit by bit. "I used to be a music teacher," she said one morning, watching the wind dance with the tree leaves. "Taught piano for 40 years at the school down the road." Jordan was surprised. "Really? No one ever mentioned that." She chuckled softly. "They forgot. Or maybe I just faded out." Then came more stories. About her husband, George, a jazz musician who passed 15 years ago. About students who once lined her porch for after-school lessons. About how her piano sat unused since the funeral. Jordan listened, really listened. And one day he asked gently, "May I see it?" Eloise hesitated, then nodded. Inside, the house smelled of old books and lavender. Dust shimmered in the afternoon light. And there, in the corner of the living room, stood a grand piano. Its wood faded but dignified, its keys untouched but waiting. Jordan walked over and brushed his fingers across it. "You should play again," he said. Eloise smiled but shook her head. "Not anymore. No one wants to hear an old woman's song." "I do," Jordan said softly. "And I think this street needs to, too." That night, Jordan wrote a blog post titled, "The Woman You Walk Past Every Day." He shared her story, her years of teaching, her music, her loneliness. He ended with this line, "Sometimes the people who seem quietest are carrying the loudest legacies." He hit publish and went to bed. He didn't expect what would happen the next morning. The next morning, Eloise stepped onto her porch with her usual cup of tea. But something was different. The sidewalk was full. Neighbors, teens, young parents, kids on bikes. People she hadn't seen in years, all standing in front of her yard. Quiet, smiling, holding small signs that read, "We see you, Eloise. Thank you for your music. Teach us something." Jordan stood at the front, phone in hand. "Your story went viral last night. People from all over the city are sharing it. You were a legend, and we never even knew." Eloise's lips quivered. "Why now?" Jordan walked up to her, Because sometimes it takes one person to remind the world that silence doesn't mean absence. You were never invisible. We just stopped paying attention. Then, something incredible happened. A young girl stepped forward with a tiny keyboard tucked under her arm. "Miss Eloise, will you teach me piano?" Eloise gasped softly. Another boy raised his hand. Then a mother. Then a retired man with shaking fingers. Eloise looked at her porch, then at the living room, and finally back at the crowd. "All right then," she smiled, "but don't expect me to go easy on you." Laughter broke through the stillness, and for the first time in years, the quietest house on Maple Street became the loudest, filled with conversation, curiosity, and the soft return of purpose. Weeks turned into months, and every Thursday afternoon, Maple Street began to hum. It started with a few neighbors, then kids from the local school, then even reporters, musicians, and former students who traveled miles just to sit on that porch and say, "You taught me how to feel again?" Eloise's living room became a classroom once more. Her grand piano sang daily, its melodies floating through the open windows, blending with laughter, clumsy finger placements, and the joy of second chances. Jordan helped her set up free lessons for anyone who asked, no matter their age or skill. They called it Porch Lessons with Miss Eloise. A jar on the piano said, "Donations optional." But the love people gave wasn't optional. It was overflowing. 1 year later, a new plaque was placed beside Eloise's front steps. "Here lived Eloise Carter, the woman who brought music back to Maple Street." And inside, on her piano, sat a photograph. Jordan and Eloise, side by side, both smiling, her hand resting gently on his. Beneath it, handwritten in cursive, "He listened when no one else did." Eloise passed peacefully one spring morning, with the windows open and the scent of jasmine in the air, her fingers resting on a piano key, a half-finished lesson plan by her side. But her music? It never stopped, because sometimes all it takes is one person to sit beside the forgotten, to hear the silence, and turn it into a symphony.